First of all, fellas, appreciate y'all coming in here. Before we get started on kind of our topics to discuss for today, just kind of give like a brief, little history about yourself as far as where you from, what you doing now. Just kind of get a little bit about yourself, man. So, B, we'll start with you, man.
Okay, Brian Cunningham, Chicago. Graduated from Hampton University. I am a realtor full-time, run my own brokerage, married with 2 kids, and one of the newer members of Kappa Alpha Psi, Gary Alumni Chapter.
What your brokerage firm? What that's at, B?
That's located in the Roosevelt Collection in South Loop. So we specialize between South Loop and South Shore, but then we also go to the South Burbs as well.
How long you been doing that for?
I've been in real estate for 7 years now.
All right. My man Trent.
What did you do before that, man?
Sales of any and all kinds.
Okay.
Xfinity, doing door-to-door sales. I worked for Quill, education sales, and I was at CTA's marketing department before that.
All right, my name is Trent McCain. I am a Gary native, born and reared. Are we supposed to be looking at the camera? Okay, thank you.
Nah,
all right.
You ain't got to.
Yeah,
This conversation amongst us.
Gotcha.
So it's like,
born and reared in Gary, Indiana. I'm a lawyer by trade, and now I'm currently serving as the deputy mayor of Gary. I've been practicing law 19 years this year, and next year I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary in the practice.
So congrats.
So, man,
I'm
I'm getting old now, bro.
With me, Lonnie Randolph Jr., the second, whatever you want to call it, from East Chicago, Indiana. Went to Maryville High School. Played college ball at Drake University. Basketball scholarship after that. Played semi-pro ball for a little bit. Went to law school at IU, Indianapolis. I got my own practice with my dad's kind of dream of mine to have my own firm. I never wanted to work for anybody. I'm licensed to practice law in Indiana and Illinois. Majority of my practice is criminal defense as well as civil litigation. Yeah, man. So that's kind of my story.
Where did you play semi-pro ball?
Man, where didn't I?
Were you overseas or
so I played in the ABA, short stint in the D League, in Albuquerque, ABA in Quad City, Iowa. Played in Pittsburgh. I forgot the name of the team I played out there. I played down in Dallas with the Dallas Defenders. And what was the name of that league? The IBL? No, not IBL. PBL, I think that was called. Played in Nova Scotia, Canada, up in Halifax. Played ball for a little bit down in Mexico. Where else? I've been overseas playing, but I didn't stick in a certain country for too long. The last place I had went to was in Spain.
Okay, cool.
What's the name of that place? Granada? Can't think of it.
Barcelona?
Granada, Spain. No, not
Granada.
Barcelona. I wish it's Barcelona. Granada, Spain. And then a few other places in between that, man. So basketball had allowed me to travel a lot, meet a lot of different people, have a lot of different experiences. So, but then at some point, my body was telling me to hang it up. So here I am now, practicing law.
That's right, brother. Something you can do until you're 90 plus.
I don't want to be practicing that long, but
yeah, but it's not hard on the body.
So
might be hard on the mind.
One of the things, man, at least today, man, I know we all kind of sit around and talk a lot. It's kind of some of the current events. A lot of things have kind of been popping off lately. And one of these things, especially when it comes to people of color, as far as, what do you do when you get pulled over by the police? And let's disclaimer, right? All the comments and opinions of everybody here today is our own personal opinion. It got nothing to do for the people we work for or the places we work with employment. So this is just our own little personal individual opinions.
There you go.
But I just hear, especially in my line of work, man, I deal with a lot of, criminal defendants who, young African American men.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times they being pulled over by the police, traffic
Mhm.
stop. So I guess my thoughts are with you all is, have you ever been pulled over by the police? Kind of how was your interaction? And then secondly, what kind of advice would you give someone, a young man in high school or something like that, as far as what he or she should do if you ever pulled by the police, especially in this climate?
The best advice I can give people is that you have to be calm. You got to be calm. And then number two, I stopped putting my registration in the glove compartment. Too many movements. And the thing is, the first thing they're going to ask you for is your driver's license and registration.
Mm-hmm.
So put it up here in your dash.
Okay.
Not dash,
Visor.
the visor.
Okay.
That way, when the police officer comes to the window, you have it ready for him. Just give it to them right before they even ask for it. And that kind of catches them off guard a little bit because you're prepared, you're not fumbling around, you know that this is business, this is routine. Why are you asking me for that? So that's what they're going to ask you for. Give it to them right before they even ask for it.
So when you get pulled over, in the process of you actually pulling over,
Mm-hmm.
you grabbing that out the visor.
Right out the visor.
Whereas B, you like, okay, I'm gonna wait till you tell me to go get it, and then once you tell me to go get it, then you'll go get it.
Because even before you get curved, for example, when you see you getting lit up, you know where it's at. Boom, boom, boom. Now I have I didn't bring it in today, but I have one of those covers for my phone where my driver's license is right there. So if I had that, I have my registration, and then I just open it up so they see it. My driver's license, registration, I give it to all of it.
All of it at one time.
I'm not trying to take it out, fumble.
Yeah.
Because another thing they do is when they're looking to see whether or not you are impaired, they're looking to see whether or not you're fumbling or if you're nervous. If you're a black man getting pulled up by police, you got a right to be nervous.
I believe it.
And I'm gonna let y'all in on the secret.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually police officers at the academy. It's called the divided attention test. So what they do is when they pull you over, if they're suspecting you're drunk driving,
Mm-hmm.
when they ask you for your license and registration, while you're reaching for it, they might ask you where you coming from or where you going.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you think, well, I still got to go grab and find this license. Am I able to still think of where I'm coming from and give a coherent statement to the cop?
And where you're going.
So it's actually a test within a test.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really know that. And then they'll put in their reports where he didn't seem to know where he was going, or he was fumbling around with the license and registration.
Looking around for it or trying to get it out.
And so they're trying to see, can you focus on doing two things at once? Grabbing your license and registration and telling me where you coming from or where you going. So peep that next time.
Yep. Another thing too, I'm not going to belabor it, but if you look at Philando Castile, who got killed in Minneapolis, he did everything right. That's what I would have done, because I too carry a weapon. I have a concealed carry permit, and in Indiana, it doesn't ever expire. I have a lifetime carry permit. Okay? If I am carrying with me, then I'm going to advise the officer I have a carry permit. So what I usually do is I'll keep my license to carry along with my driver's license and say, I am carrying, sir. And here is my permit to do so. When the more information you give them, I think that you take away the excuse that they weren't sure. They had to make a split-second decision. I just give them all the information in the world. So when Philando Castile got shot and killed by the police, I was like, damn, that's exactly what I would have done. I said, I am carrying, sir. So that person, in my opinion, they should have been convicted, but they didn't get convicted. what I've been doing recently, I was in the car with another brother. He's also a lawyer. And he ran a red light in Indianapolis.
Grand County.
You know what they did? They lit him up. This was right on Mass Ave.
Oh, I know all about Mass Ave.
Yeah. So this is a nice little party place. Remind you of a lightweight Rush Street in Chicago. Okay, lightweight, not quite Rush Street. But he ran his red light, but he had the same thing. He had his license registration ready. He said, "I'm sorry, officer, I just didn't see that light." And said, "I'm going right over here to Chatterbox. I just didn't see the light. I'm sorry." And they ran his license. And when they return back to the car, they say, "All right, Mr. Walker, enjoy yourself at Chatterbox." Because I'm not even trying. I know why you pulled me over. I'm not going to even ask you that question this time. I ran the doggone red light. So I have to pay the ticket because I'm over here. He's looking for a park over there and got distracted, ran the red light. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. Nobody hit him. He didn't hit anyone. Sometimes just fessing up. Now, a criminal defense attorney will tell you, "Hell no, don't be admitting you're doing this stuff. You can beat the ticket." But if it's your first offense or whatever the case may be, a lot of times that's why you hire a lawyer to do that. They can plead it down. They can try to get you a deferred prosecution or whatever the case may be. And the last thing, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, last thing I tell people to do, especially for us lawyers, because Lonnie, you know how the police operate. I know how they operate. You have witnessed it yourself. I can beat them, but not on the street. That's their domain. That's their domain. They don't have to answer any of my questions out there on the street. Okay? It's my job to get them in the courtroom. That's when I can do my business. That's when they are bound to answer my questions. That's when I'm the boss in the courtroom. But on the street, they are the boss. They have my life in their hands. Reminds me of an example, man. I got pulled over in Hammond Police one time. I was coming down that big hill. I forgot when you're leaving the courtroom in the hospital.
The federal building
Is that Holman
City Court? Holman, yeah.
Holman.
Okay.
Coming down that big hill. I'm about to make a right over there.
Okay,
to go to El Taco Real.
Okay.
And I did skip a lane. But the dude was a real asshole about it. We were distraught. I was in the car with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my wife, and the four of us were about to go to get something to eat. We had just left my wife's uncle on what was later his deathbed. So we were all kind of fucked up, messed up. If this is PG-13. And
it's cable.
I skipped over and said, So he pulled me over for for not making a proper lane change and everything. And my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they grew up in the 70s with Black Panther and everything, so they were really hot. And I said, "You all have to be calm. This is emotional. We just left the hospital, but let me do all the talking." So I let the guy be a jerk. "Yeah, you were." I said, "I'm sorry, sir. We just left St. Catherine Hospital, whatever the hospital is. St. Catherine? And we're just a little distraught. And I almost missed my turn, so I apologize. But that's no excuse. You still with this ticket." I said, "Okay, I understand." Wrote me the ticket. I called prosecutor Fred in the restaurant, and the ticket was gone. But see, that's what the power you have when you calm and cool. If I said, "I'm gonna beat this ticket, man. You don't know who I am," and all that kind of stuff. Those are famous last words. Do you know who I am? So I just tell you, whoever you are, never say, "Do you know who I am?" to the police.
I can't say that.
No, go ahead, D.
No, I was just gonna add that the calm be definitely, but everybody doesn't have your connections. So someone like myself, I mean, I know a few you all now, but like my cousins, they might go out there,
Yeah.
they can be calm, and you still just run to the wrong one.
That's true.
So I was going through hometown. I'm behind the car at the light, and the cop is going the opposite way. This cop goes all the way down, spins a U-turn like he's Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon or something. Gets the car's behind. He makes everybody get out the way and he pulls me over. I said, "What are you pulling me over for? You don't have a front plate in your car. Are you serious? That's a parking ticket."
Illinois.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, I'm behind the car.
Yeah.
So what was it about me that you knew that I didn't have a plate? So I show the.
Was it Illinois?
It was Illinois, yeah.
It was Illinois.
Yeah, it's South Chicago.
It was an Illinois
Sorry.
plate.
Illinois, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you're driving a rental and it's from Tennessee, they don't have to put no plate in the front.
Now this was my car for the camera. It was a Corvette, a red Corvette, and I am a black man in the car. That's why I feel like I got pulled over.
Oh, without question.
So when I pull over, I turn the car off. My seatbelt came out, hands out the window. And after everything, I had my license. I had the insurance on my app. He said, "Why is your seatbelt off? The car's off. Why do I need to have the seatbelt on?" This guy takes all the time over and write me up every ticket he could. So I had to go to court, and like I said, you can win if you know what you're doing. You know the right people to get it done. But in that position, I just wasted time of my life that I'll never get back. Going to show insurance that I had proof for. Then when I went to their small town hall court session, the guy before me must have pissed them all off. I stepped up. They still gave me the tickets. They had to pay everything off. Like,
how were you dressed when you went to court?
Slacks and a dress shirt. I didn't do the suit, but
yeah,
it gets to the point, man. Like I said, it's frustrating, and I understand it.
Yeah.
I understand the origin of police and what they were meant to do.
Slave patrol.
Yeah, and I understand, that we have a lot of officers that maybe wear other type of garb at different time of night. That's what makes it so uncomfortable for me.
It's your word, black man, against the man in blue.
That's a good point.
If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for George Floyd's death being recorded, his murder being recorded, and we found out it was 9 minutes and 29 seconds, man.
Think about that. How many incidents have there been over the years that haven't been recorded? I mean, so, and one other point I'll make on this topic is not necessarily dealing with how to conduct yourself. Well, yeah, I guess how to conduct yourself. If you ever pulled over, I'm going to look into the camera. If you ever pulled over by the police, do not consent for them to search your car. And the reason why I tell people that, look, cops need a search warrant to search your car initially. Meaning if they don't have a warrant from a judge signed off to search your car, it's against the Fourth Amendment to search your car. Unless there's an exception to the warrant requirement that doesn't allow them. One of those exceptions meaning when they come to the car, they're like, well, I smell marijuana. That can be a reason for them to search your car without your consent. But many times they will ask you, do you give me permission to go search your car? And if you say yes, now they don't have to give a warrant because you pretty much told him or her
consent
to go into my car. Now, if you don't consent, if they don't have another exception to go in your car, they can't go in there and search for anything. So I always tell my clients or people, hey, if they ever ask you, can I go? No.
Yeah.
And when they start asking you questions, you flat out, I want an attorney. Right?
What's that song by Jay-Z, 99 Problems?
Yeah.
He said, keep it in the trunk. They
Yeah,
need a warrant for that.
My rights going to need a warrant for that. No doubt. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing I will also. I don't know. Yeah, any final thoughts before we go to?
Well, I just want to ask a quick question. At what point should it get to, no, I want to speak to an attorney, or no, I want to speak to your sergeant or your supervisor?
You mean as far as police pull you over, they asking you questions, at what point should the person that got pulled over ask to speak to their supervisor?
Yeah.
At least, I don't know what you think, Trent. I don't personally think, because ain't nobody finna pick up the phone and call their supervisor, hey, you go talk to my boss. Like, that's not gonna happen. We're talking about the right time for everything. And so I think it's unrealistic that when a cop pulls you over, asks for your license and registration, and you're gonna say, let me speak to your supervisor, and they're gonna stop what they're doing and pick up the phone and call their supervisor. Now, like you mentioned before, it might be a situation that later on that day or the next day, if you want to make a complaint at the department, cool. Or if you want to consult with an attorney to see whether or not your civil rights have been violated, that's when you do it then and there. Because I think by doing all that confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
that can possibly lead to kind of like an increase as far as in the confrontation, and possibly lead to now possibly finding the reason to now ask you to step out the car.
They provoke. They're gonna see that you're provoking a situation.
Trying to be a smart
provoke
ass.
the situation too.
You one of those.
The other thing I always advise people to do is immediately note the officer's name and call them by name. I'm sorry, Officer Smith. Just let them know. Say their name. Don't say a smart ass, but Officer Smith, whatever the case may be, letting them know that I'm observing who you are. I know your name. Don't ask for no supervisor on the street, because they're not going to come out and mediate this situation. Say, Officer Smith, you could pull over Mr. Cunningham. He's a law-abiding citizen. There will be a time for that. But that time is not there on the street.
And do you feel it's the same for, I want to speak to an attorney?
Mm-hmm. The criminal defense attorney will tell you that.
So you mean when the police asking you questions?
So let's say they pull me over. I'm already, why are you pulling me over?
Mm-hmm.
And they're telling me there's an excuse. There's no marijuana smell. There's no alcohol present. And they ask me to get out the car. Should I then say, no, I want to speak to an attorney first?
No, I will comply.
Yeah,
because if it's an illegal, if anything they did was illegal, like having you get out the car, because they're not supposed to ask you to get out the car if it's just a traffic stop. And matter of fact, you have some situations, and this is kind of a little bit getting off topic, but when the police pull you over for a traffic stop, and then they're only supposed to keep you pulled over enough time to write the ticket. Sometimes you'll have officers go back to the car and they calling the canine people to come bring the dog just to do a sniff test around the car. If they don't have some type of reasonable suspicion or probable cause to think that you even have drugs in the car to begin with, they're not supposed to keep you pulled over longer than was reasonable to write the ticket in the first place. So in those situations, they do pull you over for a traffic violation, but don't have any reasonable suspicion to think that you have drugs in the car. But they keep you there for an unreasonable amount of time. And then they bring the dog out, right? And then let's say the dog sniffs and alerts to something. Even if so-called they sniff, the dog alerts to have drugs in there, and the drugs are actually in the car. That could be possibly thrown out due to an illegal detention, right? Because they had really no reasonable suspicion or no facts they can articulate for why they kept you longer than the original reason that they pulled you over for.
It's a sufficient expedition.
So my thing with being what you're saying is, if they ask you to step out, comply. That's what I would advise someone. Because like Trent saying, you're not going to win that back and forth other than, all right, put your hands behind your head. Now I'm arresting you for disorderly conduct.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. No.
But you can actually later on, like Trent is saying, you can ultimately, you might lose that battle that day. But you can win the war later on if they did something illegal. So if it's me, if they ask you to get out, I'm complying. Right now, somebody, while you complying, you might say, what I do, officer, what's going on, something like that. All right, cool. But that would be my advice.
Just comply. If they place you under arrest, that's when you shut up. You don't say a word.
Oh, yeah. So when they start asking you questions, that's when you say, I want to
When they say you have a right to remain silent, exercise that right and remain silent. Once they put you in a holding cell or put handcuffs on you, there's nothing you can say that will convince them that they were wrong and you were right.
I wanted to discuss with you all would be, kind of a lot of what's going on with these voting rights that a lot of these states are passing now to kind of restrict as far as the access to being able to vote. For example, I think Georgia has criminalized people giving food and water to people waiting in line, to vote. Trying to crack down on the hours voting is open. And then I even have a lot of friends of mine who feel like voting is pointless. Depending on where you live at, Republicans gonna always win anyway, so my vote don't mean anything, so therefore I'm not voting. So I guess my question to you all is twofold. Not only dealing with a lot of what your thoughts on what a lot of these states are doing to maybe restrict access to voting, but have you all ever had a situation where somebody, a friend of yours, like, look, man, my vote don't mean anything. I ain't vote. Like, what would be your response, or what has been your response to someone who feels like, man, voting is pointless. I'm not doing it. They gonna win anyway. Stuff still gonna be all messed up. Have you all ever had any experience with that, or have any thoughts on that?
You go first, bro.
All right. Yeah, both sides of it. There was a period of time where I felt that way. I think it was shortly after the election with
Trump.
With Trump, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, I forgot a lot of stuff from Constitution classes and learning how the popular vote and the
Electoral
vote.
yeah.
So if you don't understand that, it definitely makes it a lot harder when you're watching how these things go down. But then also, I just got to the point where I realized whatever change I want, I gotta make it. So it starts in my house, in my block, in my community, the kids that I'm talking to at these schools. That's how I try to tell people how you gotta combat it. Because it does seem like someone that's not in the legal world, there's a lot of power in play. And it's a lot of backdoor things that we'll never know about.
Exactly.
You know, that people are not silly enough to tape it.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that, it just makes you think twice.
Mm-hmm.
What made me come back around to it was just realizing the sacrifice that my people fought for to even have the right to have their voice in it. So, and my grandmother's 94 years old. It was a time that just wasn't weren't able to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I do what I can to learn about the candidates, learn what their platform is. But I'm gonna at least go do that vote now.
So what would you tell a young high schooler like, man, my vote don't mean nothing, man. Why should I vote? Like, why would you tell that person reason why he or she should vote?
I would tell them that because they have to. You can't complain if you didn't vote. You have to put your input out there. And it could be something as simple as we're voting on a meal. Well, if I don't vote on it, and then you all get something, I can't say, oh, this is nasty. Well, I didn't take the time to put my vote in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not gonna use that option that's given to you, then I think that takes away your reason to complain.
That's right.
Or your basis to complain.
One of the things that I've learned over the years, people have said it all the time. They say politics is local. And it really is. I'll give you a couple examples. Voting for president in Illinois may not be as important because I don't think Illinois has elected a Republican presidential nominee in 50, 60 years. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't know how long it's been.
Yeah.
But the same can be said about Indiana. I was in tune to this past election because my wife was running the school board. Our polls closed at 6 p.m. At 6:01 p.m. they called the state of Indiana for Trump because it's a foregone conclusion. This is such a red state. Now, go back to 2008. Barack Obama won Indiana.
Yeah, the first time.
First time ever winning a Democratic nominee got Indiana for the first time since Lyndon Baines Johnson. That's how long it's been. Now it might be another 40 years before that happens. We see those types of anomalies from time to time. But one of the issues that we have to deal with locally is just the apathy of voting. In 2008, there was a 60% voter turnout in the city of Gary, for example, because Barack Obama was running. On any other given election, our turnout is around 17%. So 17% of the registered voters decide who the mayor is going to be, who the council people are going to be, who all the municipal officers are going to be. I think this past election, I got to look up, I don't have the exact number, but it never did, it didn't reach 60% again. I think it was like 40 something. That's the type of apathy I'm talking about. That's why it matters when people say they don't think their vote counts. And I'll leave you with this one last statistic about that. In the state of Indiana, for example, there are more people living under a Democratic mayor than Republican mayors.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep, Indianapolis, Gary, Hammond, East Chicago, Evansville maybe. So if you combine the population of all those people that live under a Democratic mayor, it's more human beings, more registered voters. But you always will get a Republican governor, and you got a Republican supermajority in the Indiana General Assembly.
Yeah.
I'm sure your father can tell us a few stories about that.
I'm sure he can.
And why? Because those Democratic voters or those Democratic citizens do not vote in those presidential years when you're also electing a governor. These stories about
I'm
that.
sure he can.
And why? Because those Democratic voters or those Democratic citizens do not vote in those presidential years when you're also electing a governor. And that's why changes don't occur.
And I think that's the reason why, if like you said, if the vote didn't matter, 47, 8 states, whatever it is, wouldn't have passed here recently, or at least put bills on the floor to restrict voting access and have restrict voting rights. If it really didn't mean a damn to especially minority votes, Democratic votes, why they passing something now? But what Stacey Abrams did down in Georgia,
she shook up the world.
How close Ted Cruz came to almost losing in Texas
Yep.
to a Democratic. So the population of the country is changing, right? It's becoming there's just more
diversity.
The diversity is increasing, and with that can possibly come more possible voters who can get registered and ultimately vote. Now that's not to say they're gonna vote Democratic; they can vote whatever. But typically, minorities from certain states tend to some favor be more in line with the Democrat candidates. So now when they know that they might not have the numbers to beat you, okay, what can we do to at least restrict or prevent those people from actually voting?
Barrier.
Right. Or having voting open only from doing work hours. You know, a lot of black folks are like, I can't miss work. Right? Yeah. Where you should be extending access, having longer hours so people can come.
Early voting.
Stuff. Or mail-in ballots. You got to now use a certain mailbox that's in a whole nother county over. Right? And so, you know, my thing is, number one, I feel a duty just off our ancestors and people before us. So even regardless, I feel a duty to vote just for what they went through.
Yep.
But also for, you know, what they're doing and trying to restrict the vote, man. But I just want to see what you guys' thoughts was on it right now. But it's going to be, I mean, ultimately it's going to see whether or not Congress passes some type of that John Lewis